Welcome back. Another day, another dungeon. This time we find ourselves in Drak'Tharon Keep. We are now level 77, so another step closer to the eventual goal of making it to level 80. Haven't been rushing it up. We've been going through these quests and these zones systematically as possible, all on that grind for Lore Master. We want to get ourselves that cloak as quickly as we can. We know that this loot is going to be hard to come by. It's going to be contested by the likes of a lot of other high DPS classes that will outshine us in terms of a meta tier list. So we want to become as powerful as we can, especially in tier 7, which is when Shadow Priest will be at its strongest. Always going to find ourselves at a valuable spot in a competitive setting, but certainly not going to be on the same wavelength as a Fire Mage or some of these Warlocks as the game carries on. In terms of this one here, it's obviously the second dungeon, one that actually borders the likes of Zoldrak as well as Grizzly Hills, so it's a cool one in that regard. I haven't actually picked up any dungeon quests for this one. They do have a few prerequisites, which we've not completed. We actually haven't touched Grizzly Hills at all, just given the nature of the level we're at and the zone itself. Probably going to be something that we're going to complete for extra gold, actually at max level, so we'll wait to do that one at level 80. But here we find ourselves once again testing the limits. A little bit more AoE in this dungeon is what I found, so it was a bit of a better chance for us to try and shine. Obviously still it is normal, people are over-geared, so tab targeting and getting dots across the board, it's very mana heavy. It's damage to mana spent, doesn't usually give us the highest returns, so like I've done in the last few dungeons, at least since level 75 anyway, it's been tab checking to see exactly what kind of leeway we can get away with, how much we can spend on just mindlessly spamming Mind Seer for that fact, as opposed to dotting up a storm. So what I've mainly been doing now, in this case I didn't even Devouring Plague, I just Vampiric Touch straight into a Mind Blast, get that refreshment, or rather the replenishment passive going on through. Just a lot of mana to keep the group topped up and healthy. That's obviously the biggest change from TBC to Wrath of the Lich King. No longer is it just a case of tap target, Vampiric Touch across the board, Mana Battery, eat your heart out. It is an active buff now that needs a little bit of attending to, but it's very easy for us to fulfill that role. Obviously Ret Piloting can do it as well. Makes it quite nice in that regard. So as far as this dungeon went, yeah, quite simple, quite clean. Another great one for the thematics, and I suppose that then becomes the major question now as to, big question of the day. What makes a really good dungeon? Obviously there's been a whole different, there's been a number of different iterations over the years as to how they've looked to try and approach that question, and I guess what personally for you stands out and speaks volumes. I guess going through the list that really jumps to mind first of all would be, does a good dungeon stem from it being story driven? Does it accentuate the zone, the quest, the lore, everything that you've been doing? If that's a big driving factor for you, then when you go into these dungeons, do you meet these iconic characters? Do you unfold those storylines of these quests, of these characters that have been sharing their plight or sort of asking for your assistance? Do you feel more connected as a result? Does it sort of fulfill that role-playing aspect? Perhaps it's, the speed at which the dungeon is completed. That's what makes it good. How long does it take to complete? Do we want to be in here for 30 minutes really slogging it out and having a great time? Or, do you want to be in and out 10, 15 minutes, done, on to the next one? And, it's there to complement everything else you're doing, to level yourself up or, to gear yourself up once we start doing the heroics. Perhaps it's the simplicity. That's obviously a very... the word to look for it. I guess a convoluted answer, because over the years the dungeons have had to become harder, right? Players are getting better, technology's become stronger, so the likes of add-ons and WeCorers have come on out to make things simpler on the player end, and the developers then have that big uphill ask of, well, if everything can be pre-programmed on the computer, then how do we make life harder for you? So you compare, say, any dungeon here to what you have on retail, night and day. Same could be said of the raids as well. You look at Jailer, for example, you compare Jailer to any of the bosses in Naxxramas, and you can really tell. Even when I was doing Sunwell, yes, I know obviously it's pre-patch when I jumped into it. Would have been a product of its time, would have been very difficult on the hardware with the lag and all the rest of the issues, but stepping foot into that now, every boss was done in a minute. It was fairly tank and spank. I mean, there might have been a few mechanics where it's like, don't stand in the fire or don't explode on your team, but very cut and dry. So yeah, it's the simplicity. You know, do you need that pug protection, if you will, right? I put it like in inverted commas as to don't make it too demanding, don't make it too challenging. Otherwise, it's going to be frustrating when you wipe or players don't get it, or you find yourself in an elitist mentality of forming a group and asking for achievements or making sure that these players aren't going to, you know, hold you hostage in a way. You don't want to be stuck in a dungeon that you know you can do in 10-15 minutes and find yourself wiping on repeat 1 hour later. I guess the only other thing that would strike to mind as to what makes a dungeon good is it the replayability. You know, you spend a whole bunch of time in here, especially if you're dungeon cleaving your way to max level. You're going to be spamming, obviously, for the heroics, for those emblems. You want to get that pre-best online as quickly as you can. And then perhaps if you're playing multiple tunes, you want to make sure that you know, you're jumping into this and it's, you know, not mind-numbing beyond the part of what it would already entail. So that is a big question, one that I'm not too sure as to the best answer on. I think for me, probably speed and replayability. That might be coming more from a retail perspective because you're pushing M+, and you know, you want to get into these dungeons, you want to understand them, you want to make sure that they're not too boring, but also at the same time enough to try and incentivize you to say, you know, I did that on a +20 key, let's try it on a +25, and you know, is my understanding, is my comprehension good enough, and so on and so forth. But we're not interested in retail. We're looking at classic right now. Wrath of the Lich King. Here we are on this boss in particular. Another boss that I suppose this becomes a little bit redundant. I've said that a few times. Maybe it really is those rose-tinted glasses. But another boss I really thought was cool, right? It's a bit of a gauntlet event in terms of 4 crystals around the boss, shielding them at first. You have to kill those necromancers as they come out to allow the boss to be touched. On the stairs, then you just had, you know, multiple waves of Horde coming on down, the zombies trickling on through. And I was just able to snipe them quite easily with the likes of a Shadow Where Death here, or a Mind Blast and a bit of damage elsewhere. Fairly straightforward though in this regard, right? Dodge the blizzards, nuke the boss down, and yeah, you can see we pack ourselves a bit of a punch. This was interesting though, because looking at this loot, it's starting to hit that point now where it's getting contested. We've only replaced 2 items so far. We replaced the main head weapon that we got from the end boss of Karazhan, and we replaced a wand that we got in one of those heroic dungeons as well. Those are being replaced by questing items. I was unsure as to what was better. I'm just toggling between the crit, the haste, the values. I think overall still spell power, raw spell power is going to be our go-to. And you know, we're not going to start simming all these items and whatnot. I'm not too concerned at this stage. Ultimately, we're going to get to level 80 and those will be replaced in a heartbeat, so nothing to worry about. But I suppose on that note, yeah, even questing now, we've completed 3 zones. Next zone to go towards will be the Sholazar Basin. Nice quick zone. Got the Hemet Nessingway quest as well, the Big Game Hunter. So I'm excited for those. And yeah, usually a whole handful of different blue item upgrades. So we'll see, as you know, 77, 78. This is when a lot of people I saw in the forums, at least when I was grinding out some of this gear, especially on my PvP DK. Got a full brutal gladiator set. People saying, look, a lot of the stuff will last you till 77. Some are saying till level 80. So it's good to see once again that there is that grind and it gets rewarded, and it has certainly made questing feel very, very easy. Especially with this Vampiric Embrace that I've taken in my talents, the extra 2 points to make it even stronger. It's like a 30% just ratio of HP coming back towards me, and yeah, I mean, as long as I got mana to sustain that, I just see a group of 10 mobs and I'm just pulling them all, and you know, worst case scenario, I'm dispersing, I'm getting mana back to sustain myself, I'm taking 90% less damage. It's just a little bit too free. This boss here, King Dread, I remember watching one of Platinum WoW's videos, actually, the one that got put on the main channel, on the World of Warcraft channel, along the lines of this dragon, or not this dragon, this dinosaur was part of some experiment, and we just kind of just walk in and kill him. So, bit of a tragedy there from a like a story, roleplay, lore aspect, but here we are. Couldn't really remember too much about this boss. Obviously, we saw the fear mechanic just happen there. Outside of that, I kind of just, yeah, did the single target rotation, nuked to my heart's content, and didn't really worry. Some real juicy AoE packs now, as you're going to see here in multiple different cutout sections. We're taking 4 or 5 mobs on it at a time. I think for the most part here, we're just focusing on getting Devouring Plague out on one, using the Mindseer on that priority target. That way the damage is being spread around on every single unit. I still can't believe that Mindseer doesn't actually damage the one that you cast it on. Still feels so bizarre to me, but regardless, here we are. Does cost a fair bit of mana too. I think it was around, what, 750, 800, so you're looking at a couple, potentially even 3 Mind Flay ticks at that, at that rate, so you need to be fairly confident that, one, the damage is going to be necessary, but also that the pack is going to live long enough to find the real value out of that one. So once again, here we go. I think it was just a couple of cheeky vampiric touches, get those across, Mind Blast to get the replenishment, and then Mindseer. Shadow Web Pain obviously lasts such a long time, so you need, I think the breakpoint's about 12 seconds of dot ticking to really find the full value, but I think around 3 to 4k is what we're finding ourselves in terms of like a stable DPS or a good AoE pack. Big pull. I got excited for this one. Saw lots of mobs going at once, and I thought, okay, it's time to shine. Time to truly blast. So, tab target, we've got Disperse, we've obviously got Will of the Forsaken, we can quickly trinket out of that one nice and easily. But we've just used Disperse. Shadow Fiend's obviously on cooldown. We've got a fair bit of mana, 50% to be exact, so tried to blast as much as we could. I got too excited, and ultimately I did no damage, so I completely evaded myself. Hide the DPS meter for 1 second. And here we go for the final boss, as we, complete this dungeon. Nice and simple, fairly straightforward. A few cool bosses in between, and this one was always, quite memorable because you had the Lich King roleplay at the end with the quest interaction, and as he's sort of, talking to the corrupted trolls. So a cool interaction there to look forward to. I guess like an Easter egg, if you will, on the journey to eventually taking on the Lich King himself. I actually forgot what the mechanics were with this transformation. You see at the very start there, actually taunt the boss away. Thankfully the tank can just do that back to regain aggro. I was hitting my 4th ability, not really knowing what it did. I thought it was like AoE from memory, but ultimately just spammed the Sinister Strike instead. And tried to really catch this enhancement Shaman up, but he was just blasting up a tree. So fair play to him, must have had all the procs in the world. But that's the dungeon complete, nice and straightforward, nice and easy. We were trying to beat out that Ret Paladin, just came shy of him in 3rd. And the same story was to be overall as well. So wasn't a dungeon for us to top the meters. A strong performance overall, good one for us to complete. Good time.